Tonight, President-elect Trump starts building his next administration. A look at who will join him at the White House. Plus, while Israel wages war against Hamas and Hezbollah, violent anti-Semitism erupts in Europe.
We are seeing the radicalization of society. We are seeing young people who believe that they are doing a righteous thing by discriminating.
And the war between Russia and Ukraine intensifies as Moscow prepares for a major counteroffensive. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. President-elect Trump moving full steam ahead in his transition back to the White House. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. Trump is starting to fill out his new administration, making several high-profile appointments. This includes naming his former immigration enforcement director as border czar. CBN's Tara Mergener has more details. Trump seems to be moving pretty quickly here.
That's right, Jenna. Yeah, momentum is building at Mar-a-Lago, where Trump announced 2 major administrative appointments with more expected soon. And billionaire Elon Musk has reportedly been advising him since the election outcome last week.
As newly named border czar, former Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tom Homan would not require Senate confirmation and will take direct control over deportation policy and border enforcement operations.
The president has to come back and help solve this national security crisis, so I'm looking forward to it.
The appointment becoming Trump's first major move and fulfilling his campaign promise to crack down on illegal immigration. At the RNC back in July, Homan issued a warning to those who illegally entered the U.S.
You better start packing now.
The president-elect,
thank you very much,
has also ruled out roles for other big Republican names who had been mentioned as possible members of his new team, announcing on social media, "I will not be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or Mike Pompeo to join the Trump administration, which is currently in formation." The news follows reports that tech billionaire Elon Musk is closely involved in Trump's transition team. Musk reportedly spending a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago in the last week.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Political observers say his ideas could influence a number of areas, from immigration enforcement to military technology. New York Congresswoman and Trump ally Elise Stefanik has also been announced as Trump's pick for ambassador to the United Nations. Expected next would be a focus on critical national security and economic positions.
And Stephen Miller, Trump's top immigration advisor, is expected to become White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. Former Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin will serve as administrator of the EPA. And the president-elect will also travel to Washington this week to meet with President Biden in the Oval Office. Jenna, busy week.
Yeah, indeed. Tara, results from a number of House races are still coming in. Where do things stand there?
Well, that's right. Republicans are really hoping to seize control of both chambers, but the balance at this hour is still undecided, with the Republicans just 4 shy now of the 218 needed. Democrats are at 203. Definitely this race is plodding along, Jenna. We still don't know a week later.
All right. Tara Mergener, thank you very much. And for more, we are joined by CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. So, David, what do you make of some of Trump's picks so far? Tom Homan as border czar, Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff. They're clearly serious about illegal immigration.
Well, there's no doubt about that. These are loyalist picks, but it's more than just loyalty, right? Because loyalty can be nothing once they turn on you and decide to write a book. So let's put loyalty to the side for a moment. These are folks that are true blue ideology-wise. They are in sync and simpatico, with President Trump, President-elect Trump, especially on immigration. So that's what we're seeing with these picks. These people are not Washington establishment. I mean, Tom Homan, I talk about the Wild West. This guy, is, I guess, in a way out of central casting, but more out of the John Wayne central casting office. And then you've got Stephen Miller, who, of course, is not establishment at all. He is very much how do I say it, pretty solid on immigration, for sure, at least the way Trump sees it. So you put those together along with Susie Wiles as chief of staff, who's not an ideologue, but she runs the ship very well, and she has the trust of President Trump.
Yeah, David, what about the people Trump is not including? Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo. Are you surprised about Mike Pompeo? I can see how there might be some bad blood between Trump and Haley after the primary election, but what about Pompeo? What did you think about that?
You know, I'm a little surprised, but not really. I mean, if you really kind of drill down and think about it a little bit further, Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo, that ilk, if you will, it's kind of yesterday's news. I mean, this is a very different Trump administration coming forward. This is the Elon Musks and the some of these other folks that are around, and the Tucker Carlsons and other. I mean, this is Donald Trump, Mr. Populist. And remember, what populism means is, some will call it isolationism, some will call it non-interventionism. Mike Pompeo isn't exactly towing that full line as it relates to whether it be on defense or Secretary of State. That's not where he's at. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me. I think Donald Trump's going to go for someone that is more in tune with his foreign policies and defense views. Mike Pompeo was about 70% there, but not 100%.
Yeah, Donald Trump clearly emboldened. There's a sense, David, that Trump will do what he wants to do now more than ever after a landslide election. He'll also have likely have both chambers of Congress. And he won't be running for re-election in 4 years, so he's not worried about that. What's your sense, David, and what are you expecting from Trump and his second administration?
Well, he might not be running for re-election, but it is about his legacy. And a lot of people will say, well, his legacy is already cemented. Sure, to a degree, but there's a second term that's just as equally important here. So we'll see. Look, they want to extend the Trump tax cuts that are going to expire late in 2025. That'll be number one. And then beyond that, obviously immigration, which I believe that they need to codify it into law. He's going to do some executive orders on day one regarding the border. That'll be a start. But I think you'll see a push in the first 100 days to really codify something on immigration into law, because once you put it into law, it's very hard to get out. And of course, presidents at that point couldn't overturn it with an executive order. I think that's where the action is going to be.
Okay, we'll keep our eye on it. David, always good to see you. Thank you so much. CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. Now to the Middle East. Israel says it is making progress toward ending its war against Hezbollah. But the terror group is casting doubt on those claims, saying it hasn't received a ceasefire proposal and it's prepared to wage a long war against the Jewish state. Monday, Hezbollah fired more than 165 rockets into Israel, injuring at least 7 people. Fighting also continues between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has spoken with President-elect Trump several times since his election victory, and the two leaders are united against Iran.
These were very good and important conversations, talks designed to further tighten the strong alliance between Israel and the USA. We see eye to eye on the Iranian threat and all its components and the danger posed by it.
And Iran is also denying accusations by the U.S. that it tried to assassinate Trump. Well, Israel is still reeling from an explosion of violence against Jews in Amsterdam last week. Rising anti-Semitism in Europe is causing Jews to ask if they still have a future there. Dale Hurd reports.
Outside the Brussels Stock Exchange on the one-year anniversary of the October 7th massacre, pro-Hamas demonstrators joined in a public prayer for Allah to burn the Jews. Pro-Hamas, anti-Israel demonstrations have been held daily in Brussels since the massacre. Some have included the leaders of Belgium's major left-wing parties. Even though the European Union has designated Hamas a terrorist organization, Hamas-affiliated groups are operating in several countries. Joel Rubenfeld, president of the Belgian League Against Anti-Semitism, says Brussels today feels like Gaza, and Jews in Belgium and across Western Europe are asking if it's time to leave.
It's just crazy. It's a tsunami. It's a tsunami of anti-Semitism, which is spreading all over the Western world, and it's a failure of the democracy. It's a failure for Belgium.
Both France and Germany report the number of anti-Semitic crimes has doubled this year compared to last year. In Britain, the number of anti-Semitic incidents has more than doubled, and in this nation that has been a safe haven for Jews, some have raised the specter of 1930s Germany. Comparisons to Nazi Germany are overused, but there are some disturbing parallels in today's Britain for Jews. Because of threats, some Jewish organizations now have secret addresses. Virtually all need security. Gideon Falter heads Britain's campaign against anti-Semitism.
We are seeing the radicalization of society. We are seeing young people who believe that they are doing a righteous thing by discriminating. We see graffiti. We're hearing from Holocaust survivors who say, you've got to be really careful about this stuff. This is the thin end of the wedge.
British journalist David Collier, a Jew, is very pessimistic because of how the influx of Muslim immigrants has changed perceptions of Israel and Jews in Britain.
It's completely different. It's a different country with a different demographic, a different outlook. Everything about it is different.
In Belgium, Rubenfeld says it feels as if Jews live in a kind of parallel world where Israel, Jews, and democracy are evil and Hamas is good.
It's what I call the anti-Semite metaverse, where black is white, where wrong is right, an inversion of values, an inversion of truth.
And Collier is afraid that Europe may never again be a safe place for Jews.
Personally, I see Europe as lost, and I just don't see a way back.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, London.
Coming up, Russia plans a major push into Ukraine. How the Trump administration is preparing to handle the conflict. Welcome back. The war in Ukraine is escalating. Some 50,000 Russian and North Korean troops are reportedly getting ready for a counter-invasion to retake Russian territory held by Ukraine. It comes as Trump prepares to take the White House and potentially reshape Washington's approach to the war. Since the February 2022 invasion, Congress has passed 5 spending bills totaling $175 billion in military and other aid to Ukraine. Trump has said he'll end the war immediately. Some believe that means allowing Russia to keep territory it's taken from Ukraine. In a recent conversation with Russia's Vladimir Putin, Trump reportedly told him, quote, to not escalate the war and that he wants to discuss its resolution. On Monday, the Kremlin denied reports that Putin spoke to Trump and says there are no specific plans for the two leaders to talk. Michael O'Hanlon joins us now. He is the Senior Fellow and Director of Research in the Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. Michael, welcome. So Trump says he'll end the war in Ukraine quickly. If that's true, what do you think that might look like?
Hi, Jenna. Well, I agree with President Trump's instincts, but I think we all know how President Trump operates, and he often goes with his instincts. I don't think he can realistically have a strategy in mind with a lot of detail yet. Because I haven't heard him really refer to what would be elements of that strategy, because you can't just say, I want to end the war, when you're not even one of the belligerents. The people who are fighting the war have to be the ones to decide to stop. So you need incentives for both those sides. And I haven't quite yet understood how President Trump would gain leverage over President Putin in particular. Putin may not want to end the war where it is right now. He may think he has momentum. He still wants more of that eastern and southern part of Ukraine that he has legally annexed within the Russian parliament. And so I think we have to view Trump's views here as instinctual, as, I think reasonable in terms of where he's coming from, because I agree with him that ending the fighting is the most important thing as long as we can build a stable peace. But it's not clear that he really knows how to do that. And it's not clear anybody would really know how to do that. I've got some ideas on how to improve our odds. Other people do too. But the bottom line is Putin and Zelensky and others get a vote in this as well.
Yeah. Michael, let's talk about some of your, how you would advise the Trump administration on policy toward the war in Ukraine. What would you tell the administration?
Well, 2 ideas in particular occur to me. One, you know that Russia has $300 billion in frozen assets, mostly in European banks. And we've now agreed to start taking the interest earned by that bank account and use it to back up a loan to Ukraine. I think we should start telling Putin that if you don't end this war soon, we're going to start taking a certain amount of that money and confiscating it and giving it to Ukraine for its reconstruction, and basically specify how much we would take each year so that Putin has an incentive to get going on negotiations. That's one idea. A second idea, I think we can look for ways to help protect Ukraine long term without bringing it into NATO. Putin hates NATO and he hates the idea of Ukraine and NATO. We can say to President Putin, listen, we'll work out some other kind of security arrangements for Ukraine, maybe some American and other Western trainers in uniform on Ukrainian soil, some other kind of architecture. But if you don't agree to the peace relatively quickly, then we will consider bringing Ukraine into NATO. So you create incentives for Putin to negotiate and negotiate sooner rather than later. I think those are the kind of things that have to be part of any real strategy. And I hope the president's team, once he builds it, President Trump's team, that is, will start thinking along these lines.
Yeah, we'll see who he puts on his team. Michael, what do you make of this alliance between Russia and North Korea, and what's in it for North Korea?
Well, North Korea can get battlefield experience. They haven't fought since they fought us and South Korea in 1953. They also probably get Russian technology for some of their missiles or maybe even their nuclear weapons, where they're trying to improve their capabilities. And they also, I'm sure, get a long-term Russian promise to have their back at the UN Security Council and not impose any more sanctions on them. You may recall, Jenna, as recently as 2017, in Trump's first year as president, Russia and China cooperated with us to put new sanctions on North Korea after North Korea did missile and nuclear tests. I don't think Russia's ever going to agree to that again. And my guess is that President Putin has made that promise to Kim Jong-un. So technology, battlefield experience, political support at the UN, these are among the benefits for North Korea.
Okay, Michael O'Hanlon, we're out of time for this evening. Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institute. Thank you so much, Michael. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Up next, made for connection, but lonelier than ever. See how one country is fighting an isolation epidemic after this. Welcome back. The days are getting shorter and the months getting colder. With winter approaching, many people face seasonal depression and loneliness. CBN medical reporter Lori Johnson shows us how to fight back by making relationships a priority.
Like millions of Americans, Ann Hales knows the depression and anxiety caused from feeling isolated.
Well, I was at home, no one there but myself, and it was so lonely I just didn't know what to do.
An introvert by nature, Ann stepped out of her comfort zone by joining a church sewing ministry.
And I've met so many people. My horizons have been broadened, and I don't have that loneliness anymore that I had before. It was terrible.
Ann's story shows how in-person social connection really helps.
Church is what's known as the third place, right behind home and work. People who regularly go to their third place tend to experience less loneliness and have overall better mental health.
Other third places range from clubs to community centers to coffee shops.
This might be going to the small group, this might be adding an accountability group, or it might just be a conversation on your back porch with a couple friends, as long as you have it regularly.
In his book, Made for People, Justin Early says God's plan involves living in community.
We should understand friendship not as a luxury, but as a necessity to living the good life, physically and spiritually.
He believes the goal of regularly getting together with friends is vulnerability that ultimately leads to intimacy.
There's a difference between looking out into the world side by side, and that's meaningful, and turning to each other and saying, now let's talk about each other.
Don't make the mistake, however, of substituting online connections with the real thing.
There's studies that show that, the receptors in our brain, as we scroll through reels and, we get likes on certain things, there are centers in our brains that light up for that. But that's all short-lived. And all of a sudden, we're programming our brain to have these responses from a screen.
Doctors say even a little personal interaction is better than none at all.
It's okay to say hi to a stranger. Just a smile, just a quick hello. You don't know what they're dealing with that day. Not only is it good for your mental health, but it's probably great for theirs as well.
And kids feel lonely too.
It's so easy nowadays for families to come home and they just sort of isolate all separately into their own bedrooms and usually online.
Parents can help by getting kids together with their friends.
Make your home the place that you invite the friends over, buy a bunch of snacks, and maybe they watch a movie, but you got to take the phones out of their hands.
And for inspiration, Americans can look to Israel, which has next to no self-reported loneliness.
Communities don't create rituals. Rituals create communities.
In his book, The Genius of Israel, Dan Senor points out how Israelis bond over regular Hebrew rituals, such as Shabbat.
And if you go walk by any home in Israel on a Friday night, you will see whether they're secular Jews or they're very religious, traditional, observant Jews, they're all doing the same thing. And so there's this weekly ritual that brings people together.
He adds that Israelis see connecting to each other as part of something larger than themselves.
The whole notion of living in Israel is about togetherness and not just about doing whatever you do successfully on your own.
So in America, where many continue to struggle with loneliness, experts recommend a course correction by putting down the phone and prioritizing in-person relationships. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead, a thank you to our veterans for their service.
Download the CBN News app. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Get the CBN News app today.
Finally tonight, honoring heroes past and present of the United States Armed Forces. On this Veterans Day, annual parades and celebrations happened across the country. In Florida, the 60-story Paramount Miami World Center Tower is glowing with the world's largest digital American flag and portrait of Uncle Sam. In our nation's capital, D.C. first responders held a Veterans Day parade through Capitol Hill. And across the river, Arlington Cemetery marked the day with a wreath-laying ceremony at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and parade of colors. Of course, we at CBN News thank the members of our military for their bravery and sacrifice and say Happy Veterans Day on this 11th day of November. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.